This feels now like an opportune moment to summarize the last 3 sessions we had. It won't be me, however, who's doing this. I'll pass over to Alex Eisenhardt, who is Head of Data Analytics at Bark.London, who has a fantastic case study to share with all of us how components from incremental attribution to testing have helped him and the client to drive new business growth. So over to Alex, thank you.
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you very much to Daniel and all the team at Meta for inviting us and having us here today. Also excited to see Ireland and Dublin for the first time in my life, despite living just across the water. So, Bark.London, we've been around since around 2019, and yeah, we are really happy to talk to you today about our latest test. I've been really well set up today, been thinking a lot like, how much background should I give? What does incremental mean? What do these things mean? But we're all really well prepared now to talk through the results of our test, which I'm really happy about. So yeah, let's go straight into it. So we're talking today about incremental attribution. We've already been talked to in depth about how that works. And in short, for PomPom, we tested incremental attribution using conversion lift and using a multi-cell setup. I think what's really interesting about this is we've talked about incrementality in the platform, how retargeting campaigns are perhaps not as incremental as prospecting campaigns, and I really feel like after having tested the new incremental attribution tool on Meta, what we found is what the team here at Meta are building really kind of reflects what we've been trying to do as an agency prior to the release of this product. So everyone's familiar, retargeting looks really good on paper, but is there more value in it? If you spend more on it, are you going to get more gain from it? What really works, right? And so we've often made in-platform results look worse on paper, but led to business growth for our clients, even before we were really formally testing this with MMM and lift studies. So yeah, in short, to give an overview before I get stuck in, of course I'm going to tell you today incremental attribution worked well for us under this test, and I'm going to talk in a lot of detail how we looked at that and the different metrics we looked at to compare in this test. We're going to learn that, of course, conversion list studies, marketing mix modeling are essential to understand whether a tool like this does work. And indeed, for many other things that we test and think about in marketing, these methods are really essential. As I've already said, upper funnel can look worse, but it can be better, right? So this is really what we're going to talk about today. And as there's a final overarching theme to this as well. It's when we look at click-based data, the most important thing about this for us is they're a signal. They're a signal to drive targeting, they're a signal to make our ads more effective, to reach the right people at the right time. Not necessarily, not always a tool to see what works best. So the test setup, like I said, we did a multi-cell test. So we split our ad account into 2 halves. In one half, the conversions campaigns are all optimized to 7-day click, 1-day view, default setting. And on the other half, we are optimizing to incremental attribution. We had 12% of the UK held out from not seeing Meta ads. And of course, with this multi-cell setup, we're getting a figure for both sides of the test, what the incremental result was for both. And so not only can we use that to say which one we think was better, but in later slides I'll talk a little bit more about how that helps us with our marketing mix modeling. With the help of Meta's Robyn tool, we could use the results to calibrate our marketing mix models and kind of advance our measurement, advance our understanding of the study, and also what happened afterwards. So, looking into the results. So we really looked at this from every angle we kind of could. Most importantly, the conversion lift study result itself. So we found a 38%, is it 38 or 39? 39% ROAS improvement from using incremental attribution from the lift test results. But most strikingly, in platform, we could look at 7-day click, 1-day view attribution of the incremental attribution campaign and compare it to the other side. So looked at on this common metric, there was no real difference to be seen. So if you had done this in a A/B test setup, we would have seen that incremental attribution was like 2% or 3% worse, and we would have been completely blind to the benefits that it brought. So this is where I maybe pull out some more complicated modeling jargon, but I'll try and keep it really grounded and understandable. But essentially, marketing mix modeling helps us understand the impact of incremental attribution during the test that we ran. And as I was saying before, it's also useful for what happens afterwards, for measuring the benefits in the weeks and months thereafter. And it actually helps us to understand the value of other channels, not even meta campaigns, the other channels and activity that we're running. So people aren't familiar with calibration. Essentially what's going on here, we're creating a marketing mix model, and we're using correlation to estimate the relative value of the different channels or activities that we are spending on. So the calibration, what happens is we can provide to the marketing mix modeling using Meta's Robyn tool what the result from the lift study was, and the modeling process is going to take that information and is going to kind of converge results to be similar to that result that we saw, as similar as possible, while still giving us like a plausible model for all of the data that we're looking at. And what was really interesting about this test is it's quite common for people to run a lift test on the whole of their Meta account and use that to calibrate their media mix models. But in this case, as we split our Meta account into two, we had 2 calibration points. So in our marketing mix model, instead of having all Meta ads as one input, we have 2 inputs for our 2 campaign types, and each can be calibrated with our lift result. And what's really good about this is we get a better, more accurate balance from the outputs of our models of what is being driven by paid media and what is being driven by external effects such as seasonality. A really interesting side effect of doing something like this, and this is going to be maybe a big theme for my talk today. When you are doing marketing mix modeling, we need variance. And the big word that I want everyone to come away from here, if you haven't heard the word counterfactual, today's the day you're going to learn it and really own this word and understand it, because it's really important when we're using statistics to understand the causal drivers of really anything, and it applies the same to marketing. So if over time we always change our budgets the same amount between all the different things that we are doing, we don't have an example of a time where we spend more on channel A but less on channel B. So it's kind of impossible using a correlation over time to say which one was really better, right? Like if you want to understand if 2 attributes contribute to performance at work, like intelligence and maybe a soft skill, if everyone who you're collecting evidence on has equal skill in both of those factors, you don't know which one was important, right? And so what's interesting is when you actually do a test like this, even without the calibration result, all of a sudden we have a big shift over time in our ad spend from something to something else. And just that alone, if you have over the years evidence of you doing this, you're going to better be able to make sensible marketing mix models at all. What's also great about Robyn marketing mix modeling in the context of this test is ad stock. That's one term we actually hasn't already been explained today before I came on, so I'll quickly do it. But the ad stock effect is the phenomenon that if you spend budget on ads on a given day, you're going to drive sales not just on that day, but also in subsequent days. And some channels have a longer tail than others. And of course, the interesting thing about that is, as modelers, we're trying to estimate this effect. But again, if there haven't really been big swings in budget where things have got switched off, it can be a bit of a stab in the dark, right? So this is a really interesting scenario where we're spending on something and we've dipped it very suddenly over a period of time, and we've shifted into something else, and this gives us better data points to understand this. And this is an really important data point to understand. Maybe we've all been there, someone wants to cut spend on upper funnel activity. It's a short-term gain. It might make the books look good in the short term, but are you damaging your long-term growth? So this is something really interesting and important to think about. So we've looked at comparing both sides of our test, but we're not finished yet. We've got more charts and more numbers for you. So when we ran this test, we were in the beta phase. So we got attribution results from the incremental attribution system only for our campaigns that were optimizing to that attribution method. So we didn't compare that across the two cells, but what we could do is in the cell where we used incremental conversions is we could compare what does the conversion lift study say, what does Ads Manager say on a default setting, 7-day click, 1-day view, what does incremental conversions attribution say, what does GA say? And that's what we're looking at here on this chart. So this is just data from that one half of the study. And we can see that incremental conversions, so what the incremental attribution method ascribed to our activity was quite close to what the conversion lift study measured, which is great. So, obviously we've learned that this attribution method is based off the results of previous conversion lift studies, right? So this is kind of what we're hoping and expecting. In the meanwhile, 7-day click, 1-day view is reporting a lot more conversions, it's overvaluing our activity, and last click GA, unsurprisingly, last click methods, especially on a multi-touch point last click, it's not looking very good, right? I'm actually not 100% sure how I'm doing for time, but I wanted to definitely talk a little bit about basically I feel like I've bashed quite a lot click-based measurement, MTA, in-platform results. We do use those numbers, we do act on them, we do A/B tests, we do all this stuff, but as was really well explained to us in the talks before me, it's all about context, right? So for micro decisions on accounts, we are using click-based measurements. We are looking at conversions in Ads Manager. We might look at some softer metrics on GA, like time spent on the site, other interesting things. And combine that all together to make insight and make decision. But the important thing is we're not taking it as gospel. They're clues. They're clues as part of a wider picture. So, for example, we might, track funnel metrics, how's the funnel drop off, or GA measured conversion still. But the main idea is we're looking for big swings in that, and that might tell us something about what's happening, rather than taking the meaning of these metrics like at face value. And then, of course, for new approaches, new campaign types, we want to advance how we're thinking about things and move more intelligently. So we want to start using data science. Of course, the gold standard here is conversion lift studies and multi-cell conversion lift studies, especially if you're trying to test something new. But also a big mention to differences in differences. If anyone is familiar with this, that's essentially we're making a forecasting model that presumably has some strong predictive value. You can show that in the past this model predicts what's going to happen in the near future. You take an action and you see if afterwards things follow what you expected or whether they actually improved. Which is also an important method in validating your marketing mix models as well. Media mix modeling as a whole is obviously very useful and helpful for this. Ability to do that is very reliant though on the data you have, whether you've been experimenting a lot in the past. So I'm on my final slide, but I've got still a little something I kind of want to share with everyone. So I mentioned how important variance and counterfactuals are for strong marketing mix models. And so a big gripe that a lot of people have in the modeling world, or let's say a challenge that modeling practitioners face, is that a lot of marketers aren't comfortable with the concept of the confidence interval. And what I kind of mean by this is a lot of marketers are used to looking at numbers on paper and they look like objective measurements, right? There were exactly this many people who clicked on my ad and converted within the next 7 days. But they're not perfect measurements. They're perfect measurements of what they're measuring, but they're an estimate of the incremental value that it's driving to. But they're estimates. I'm more worried that it doesn't have a confidence interval. Obviously, I'm a bit of a statistician. I like them, sure. But it's important to know what you don't know, right? An estimate with no idea of the confidence level of it, have I gathered enough data, all of this stuff, gives a false sense of confidence that can be dangerous, and you have to use things in the right context, right? So, yeah, I kind of hope everyone comes away from this interested about counterfactuals, interested about causal inference in marketing, so discovering what the real drivers are, and kind of trying to dig deeper and use experiments to get that knowledge. And yeah, plan ahead. You know, we've talked about after you've done a test, what do you do afterwards? But in order to know things, you need to often, you know, take actions that you think are going to be measurable and go out there and really try stuff, put money behind it, see if it works, and give it a good test.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. So we learned plenty of new words today.